weekly Cubs-related podcast presented by CubsInsider.com. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. And guys, do you hear that? Do you hear that faint sound in the background? I think I know what it is, Brendan, and it's the sound of brooms sweeping across Wrigley Field as the Chicago Cubs sweep the St. Louis Cardinals out of Wrigley Field. They send them one game under 500 in a wonderful series at Wrigley Field. So we will take you through those three games. We will break down everything that happened there. We had Craig Kimbrell throw his first bullpen as a Chicago Cub. We will touch on that a little bit. And we will highlight certainly another masterful performance in a growing list of them, guys, for the professor, Kyle Hendricks, who dominates the St. Louis Cardinals once again on Sunday Night Baseball. But Brendan, I want to bring you in right away here, because we talked about how the Cubs are headed out west to play the Rockies, to play 4 in Los Angeles with the Dodgers, and that is always a tough trip for any team and in really any sport coming from the Midwest or the East Coast. And for the Cubs to go 6-1 on this homestand, beating the Angels on Monday, taking 2 of 3 from the Colorado Rockies, and then sweeping the St. Louis Cardinals. What an effort from this group on this homestand prior to the heading west.
Exactly what they needed to, right? I mean, we always circle that West Coast trip because they do give the Cubs so much trouble. For them to go into Wrigley, take 2 out of 3 from Colorado, win that Angels makeup game, and sweep the Cardinals ahead of this trip is huge, Corey. Absolutely huge. And I gotta say, this might be the first time they've won a game on like a dress-up getaway day. I cannot remember the last time they actually did that ahead of this one, which is the Jon Lester getaway day, dress-up day as Jon Lester. Incredible, Corey, what we saw there.
Yeah, guys, I gotta tell you, this might be peak Cubs content. I'm not sure.
I think so.
I'm not sure we're gonna get better than this, because this was just incredible. So if you haven't seen this yet, boy, are you in for a treat. I'm not sure how you avoided this, but you're in for a treat. So go on over to @Cubs on Twitter or Instagram. You can check out a lot there. I shared a few on our Instagram @Cubs_related. Have some at Cubs Insider on the Real Cubs Insider handles. So you should be able to find it. But basically, you know, we've seen these theme trips before. They just did the basketball jersey one, obviously the famous one with the onesies, when Jake Arrieta threw the no-hitter in Los Angeles. So, you know, we're certainly familiar with these, but the theme for today's trip, tonight, Sunday night, as they head west, was Jon Lester. And the best part, Brendan, and really the thing that needs the most attention here, is that I believe almost everybody took Jon Lester as the theme to mean, you know, a nice pair of slacks, a big belt with a big buckle. John's, you know, big on that.
Very big buckle, yes.
Yes. A sport jacket of some kind, a collared
Maybe
shirt.
some plaid, you know.
And a cowboy hat or a Western hat. I'm not sure if there's like a proper term for that, but a cowboy hat. Most of us would think of if we said the phrase cowboy hat. And almost everybody just dressed up like that. That was how Jon headed to the plane. I'm looking at a photo of Chris Bryant here, looking very dapper in this particular
very sharp
outfit.
Of course, yes.
Though, you know, I got to be honest with you, like, good luck finding a theme trip or an outfit style that Chris Bryant doesn't figure out a way to look very good in. But almost everybody took the same exact approach in that kind of look, except for one, Anthony Rizzo. And Brendan, I said this to you before we got on, but there are a multitude of reasons that Anthony Rizzo is the captain, the unofficial captain of the Chicago Cubs. There are many reasons that he deserves a statue at Wrigley Field. But this is the icing on the cake, folks, because Anthony Rizzo shows up in cowboy boots, American flag shorts, an American flag, like just the star portion jacket, a short sleeve sport jacket, and Jon Lester's own sunglasses, the aviator sunglasses, holding a 6-pack of Miller Lite and a box of fried chicken. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the best single piece of Cubs content I have ever seen. And Brendan, I told you, they're not when they get home from the road trip, not after his career's over. No, I need a statue of Anthony Rizzo at Wrigley Field right now, tomorrow, Monday morning, as you guys are listening to it. It needs to be going up.
Corey, what would it be? If you had to design your perfect Anthony Rizzo statue.
That's easy.
What is it?
It's easy. Come on. Yeah, it's the last out of the World Series with the hands in the air.
Yeah, I know. With the face like, oh my God, we did it.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I feel like, it's not as obvious, but him putting his hands over his head, saying, oh my God, after his versus double, that's a close second. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
I think we've talked about it before, the typical Anthony Rizzo, I just hit one of those towering home runs, kind of lean back that he does.
That's a good one.
At Wrigley, those are always good. But guys, for him to go this direction, to reference the fried chicken thing from John's time in Boston, to come right out with the 6-pack of Miller Lite, this is unbelievable. And the picture that the Cubs tweeted, he's like on the phone in this pic. He's got his, big wristwatch on. This is electric content, in so much as a picture on Twitter can like burst off of your phone or computer screen. This is absolutely incredible. And I'm floored, really. But Brendan, I have to ask you. So again, if you have not seen these pictures, head on over to @Cubs. They tweeted out pretty much everybody, not the whole team, but the bulk of them. So you kind of get the idea. But Brendan, I need a quick top 3 of your favorite of these outfits on the Jon Lester theme trip.
Number 1, Pedro Strop. That's a slam dunk right there. Yeah. So if you haven't seen this one either, go find it ASAP.
Yeah.
So Strop is wearing a bejeweled Chicago Cub necklace. Okay? Yeah. Amongst 2 other whatever.
That I will tell you, Brendan, a little inside baseball here. I confirmed with Pedro. I've joked on here before that I DM him on Instagram because he follows us, and that is a true statement. And I confirmed with him once in Spanish. I sent him a message.
Look at you.
Asking him, is that chain a bearer to represent the Cubs? And he responded, yes, it is.
I love it.
So little inside note for you there.
But then he has 3 buttons or 4 buttons all the way down just to highlight that Cub. And he has, of course, the big belt buckle.
Giant
He's got,
belt.
Black and white contrast. Pedro's looking sharp. So he's number 1. Number 2, you gotta go with Rizzo, the captain. This is high quality costume right there. And number 3, kind of a wild card, is Kyle Hendricks. He's wearing a huge belt buckle.
Yeah.
And anytime you put that guy in a cowboy hat, he kind of looks like Woody, I feel like. And he fits the entire, the entire theme so well, I think. So yeah, I got Strop number 1, I got Rizzo number 2, and I got Hendricks number 3.
I think that's fair. I'm putting Rizzo number 1 just because I was, again, I was blown away by it. And as they were going through the day when we figured out that it was going to be a Jon Lester theme trip, I think we got tipped off to that because, Carl and Hayward had posted, kind of previews on their Instagram stories. So we kind of got the idea that this is what they were going to do. But I was wondering, is everybody just going to show up in a cowboy hat? I wonder if anybody does something related to the Red Sox or, camo, kind of the Jon Lester, the Hunter vibe or anything like that.
Jon Lester, the
Hunter. So Rizzo
nice.
coming with this is number 1 for me. But you're right. This picture of Strop is,
come on,
all-time content. And what's funny about that too is that when we heard that it was the Jon Lester thing, honestly, I think the predominant sentiment, amongst at least the people that I follow or just the mentions that I saw on social media was oh my God, I can't wait to see what Pedro Strop pulls out for this. Just because, he's kind of the electric fashion guy on the team.
Believe by Strop, man. He's the only Cub to have his own fashion brand for a good reason, too.
If you've taken our advice and follow him on Instagram, you're well aware that he brings the heat with the fashion on a pretty much daily basis. So it was just funny, though, to see how many people were like, okay, this is great. I love Jon Lester, but I need to see what Strop is going to do here. So I would go Rizzo, Strop, and then like I said to you before, Jose Quintana posted a picture kind of really posing, like almost like a magazine shot, seeming like before he headed to the ballpark. Looked really good. And I think I'm going to throw Jose there at number 3. Carl posted a video of him in his outfit dancing to Old Town Road, so that is certainly, going to get him bonus points. Javi, again, similar to Chris Bryant, like you couldn't find a theme that they don't rock just the absolute hell out of. So, I think Javi's up there as well, but I think I'm going to throw Jose Quintana in there as a little bit of a dark horse. But look, Strop is insane. This outfit, just absolutely insane. And like you mentioned, there's definitely less buttons done on the shirt than are open. So that's, obviously big points for that. But this Rizzo thing, man, I am the fried chicken. I was like in tears looking at this at dinner as I was looking at these pictures come across. So that's the Jon Lester themed road trip. I love it. And, This is one of their best. These are always great, these theme road trips. And you're right,
coming
Brendan.
off a sweep too. I mean, it can't be any more perfect. I mean, come on. It's a perfect world for the Cubs right now.
I do wonder. I wonder if they let John have total control of the music on the airplane. If we're just going straight country out to Colorado, or if we're, kind of divided up in our sections as normal. But,
Rizzo would not allow that though. Rizzo, I believe is a resident DJ, so that's not probably happening.
Well, I'm just saying it's a Jon Lester theme trip. Everybody's in cowboy hats. I didn't know if, they'd get on there and it would turn into, a hoedown or whatever goes on. But look, I've been to the Old Crow Smokehouse down on Clark Street, so I kind of understand what goes on with country music. Sure. But anyway, this was great stuff. You don't have to sell me on a Jon Lester themed anything. I'm all in. This was absolutely fantastic.
You're not going to mention your own picture? I mean, come on, Corey.
If you go to my Twitter,
picture, you got to mention it.
If you are so inclined, you can go to my Twitter at CF Cubs Related. I did my best to participate. I don't own like a legit cowboy hat, like by the book or like what these guys are wearing, but I did my best. I had a Western-ish shirt.
I thought you looked pretty sharp. It gave me a chuckle, so I think
participated. I mean, look, if we're doing a Jon Lester themed trip, I'm in. Sign me up. That's
if I knew ahead of time they were doing this, I would have Amazon Primed a hat. I just don't have a cowboy hat. That's my issue.
Right. Yeah. So all in all, this was a good Sunday, folks. The Cubs sweep the Cardinals. Then, like you said, Brendan, I don't remember it, like if they literally have never won on the getaway day for one of these themed trips, but it certainly makes it a lot more enjoyable when these pictures start rolling across, to, have it come on the heels of winning 3 games in a really, really good homestand. So let me run through, these games real quick. And, then we'll get into kind of obviously like the meat of our discussion here. Again, I think, we'll talk about this sweep and just the context of all of that and, take a particular look at Saturday's game. I thought that was a really big game and one that we'll focus on a little bit. And obviously Kyle Hendricks, there's a lot to talk about there. He has been on some role and certainly against the St. Louis Cardinals. So we will delve in a little bit more there, but just to, kind of set the stage and inform that conversation. Just a quick run through of these games. The Cubs winning 3-1 on Friday. Another really good start from Cole Hamels. He was lights out in this game. 8 innings, 3 hits, no earned, 1 walk, and 10 strikeouts. He goes to 5-2 on the season. Strop gets his 6th save of the season. Hamels' ERA now sits at 3.24. We've talked about this before, but man, did that move work out for the Cubs, not only trading for him and his performance down the stretch in the 2018 season, but ultimately deciding to pick up his option for the 2019 season. He has been unreal for the Chicago Cubs since coming over, and Friday was no different. And the Cubs getting their runs in this one. Javi Baez, his 16th homer of the season, another Oppo shot to right field, and a Victor Caratini double. Those are your 3 runs for the Cubs. A major hat tip. We talked about this, I think, especially the night that he broke that or fractured that bone in his hand. But major hat tip to Victor Caratini for the job that he is doing. We were, admittedly, we've already admitted this, not big fans of not going out and getting a more veteran backstop for this team coming into the year. And Victor has been fantastic, both in catching, receiving, his relationships with the pitchers that he works with, and on offense. So a major kudos to Victor Caratini for the job that he is doing and seizing the reins of that backup position. Saturday, which we'll maybe get into a little bit more than the other games. The Cubs winning 9-4. The Cubs fall behind in this one 4-0. A 36-pitch first inning for Jon Lester. Looked to, not be shaping up to be a wonderful night at Wrigley Field, but Jon shuts it down completely. From that point on, he follows that first inning with 5 shutout innings. His total line on the evening, 6 innings, 5 hits, 4 earned, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. But he follows the first with 5 shutout innings, and the Cubs offense scores 9 unanswered runs for him to get him his 5th win of the season. He improves to 5-4 on the year. The big hits in this game, the Cubs chip away. They do respond in that first with 2 runs. Javi and Wilson driving in runs there. In the bottom of the third, they get it to within 1 on a Javi triple for another RBI for El Mago. In the bottom of the fourth, Kyle Schwarber with what appears to be a growing trademark for him, Brendan. On the 11th pitch of an at-bat, he fouls off 6 pitches in this at-bat and then rips a game-tying home run into the bleachers in right field. His 12th home run of the year that made it 4-4 in the bottom of the fourth. The big blow in this game, the aforementioned Victor Caratini, a bases-clearing double to drive home 3 runs that made it 7-4. Kyle Schwarber followed with a double of his own to make it 8-4, and an Addison Russell sac fly in the 7th made it 9-4. But again, this was just one of those games I think that we talk about that really catches your eye as far as this team is special. To respond to that first inning from Lester's perspective and from the offense's perspective was really impressive. And we always say, I think kind of really telling of the mentality, the fortitude, and just the approach of this team to, okay, we're down 4-0, fine. We got a long game here. Settle in, St. Louis, because you're about to get blown out. Literally, you're about to get blown out even though you're up 4-0. So that was a really impressive game for the Cubs on Saturday. Again, we'll circle back to that after I tell you about Sunday. And Sunday, it was all about the professor once again. Kyle Hendricks picks up his 7th win of the season. Look, if he is not heading to Cleveland for this All-Star game, it is a crime. Okay, yeah. He has never been an All-Star, and that ends in 2019, folks. Right now, okay? Yeah. He improves to 7-4, 7 innings, 8 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, and 3 strikeouts. For Hendricks, his ERA on the season sits at 3. The Cubs getting their runs in this one. They took the lead in the first inning on a Rizzo groundout. The Cardinals tied it in the top of the second. The Cubs would add 2 in the bottom of the 5th on a Bodie single and a Kyle Schwarber double. Kyle would add another RBI single in the 7th to make it 4-1, and Cargo Wego with his first home run of the season with the Cubs, his 3rd overall on the year to make it 5-1, and that would be all she wrote. Pedro Strop, cowboy hats to the left, folks, picks up his 7th save of the year, and the Cubs sweep the St. Louis Cardinals, who, you hate to see it, Brendan, fall to a game under 500, and man, rough night for the city of St. Louis. The Bruins, did they also win 5-1? I think that was 5-1 too.
Really?
What a night
Look at that.
for the city of St. Louis. Boston, they lose Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and the Cardinals sent to a game under 500 at Wrigley Field. So, Brendan, I want to talk about Hendricks, but first I do, since we're coming off the recap, now that that's over, I do just want to circle back and get your thoughts on that game on Saturday, because I think for multiple reasons, that is a game that stands out to me, and maybe more so than most games we've seen this team play on the season. For Jon to throw 36 pitches in that first inning, give up 2 bombs, he got hit hard in that first inning, give up 4 runs, team's down 4-0, And for him personally to respond the way that he did, to get through 6 innings after you throw 36 pitches in the first inning is really impressive. For him to be able to get that length there and not make them dip into the bullpen, great, obviously. But he totally shut them down after that first inning. I think he said after the game, I don't think they had another hard hit ball the rest of the game after that first inning. So totally shutting them down. And the offense cashes that in. And the job that they did against the Cardinals starter Flaherty, who has been having a really good season, but he doesn't even get through the 4th inning. He only goes 3 2/3. They had run his pitch count, I think, near 60, 70 already in the 3rd inning. They get 2 right back in the bottom of the 1st inning. They get 1 in the 3rd and then 1 in the 4th, like chipping away, getting themselves back in it. And then once they were into the St. Louis bullpen, they blow the door open on this game. Just a really impressive effort from this team to stay within their approach and know, fine, it's 4-0. Like, we've got 9 innings here to get back in this game. We know that Lester is going to get back out there in the 2nd inning, lock things down for us, and we're going to take care of business. And they absolutely did. And for a game to start as poorly as that did, to end with a blowout, and by they score the 4 runs in the bottom of the 6th inning. So the last few innings there, you're coasting to a victory. Really impressive from this Cubs team.
Well, I'm watching that Lester game too. And the first 2 batters, I thought he looked decent. So for him to give up 4 runs in that first inning was a surprise to me. I know he got hit hard, and I know he got behind a few of those counts, but I thought the stuff looked good, and he was just missing on a few of those pitches. But for Lester to rebound like that, we've seen him in the past implode kind of in the first few innings, not because he's not, all there, but he just doesn't have his stuff that day. Lester had his stuff, and for him to get past that first inning and to rebound the way he did, it sort of reminded you of 2016. I hate comparing this team to 2016 for a few reasons, but it is nevertheless like the benchmark, I guess, that you compare most teams to. It reminded you of that year because the Cubs did that frequently. They would get down, but it never felt as if they were totally out of the game. But one specific reason why I thought that was very reminiscent of 2016 was because the Cubs faced Flaherty, 5 days ago, 6 days ago, whatever it was, for them to basically just destroy him through 60, 70 pitches in 3 innings. That is what that 2016 team did. And that is why they were so successful. You look in that World Series, once they saw Kluber for the 3rd time in 10 days, guess what happened? They just
What did happen, Brendan?
They won the World Series, Corey. They won Game 7 of the World Series after seeing its same pitcher for the 3rd time. So that's what I mean by that. The Cubs, when they are exposed to the same pitcher, whether it's the 3rd time through the order or multiple times in 1 week, more times than not, they tend to perform well. And I think seeing that happen in Saturday's game, Lester's comeback and rebound was encouraging, but the fact that they overwhelmed Flaherty, right? They overwhelmed him to the point where 1 through 8, everyone hit. Schwarber was 2 for 4, Bryant was 1 for 5, Rizzo 1 for 5 with 2 walks, Baez 1 for 5, with 1 through 4.
1 through 9, Brendan. Jon Lester took a walk in this game, okay?
Actually, no, you're right too. And then Caratini came in, he had a pinch hit double to drive in 3. So, yeah, that is what you saw so consistently when the Cubs were at their best. And when a lot of those same guys who I just mentioned, when they were at their best and their peak, not only last year in 2017, but also in 2016 as well, when they saw the hitter or the pitcher multiple times, they had success. So that's why I'm most excited about that win. It's not the fact that, they came back 4-0, but it does show what this team is capable of when they face someone multiple times, and 2, when they're down. This offense is no joke, Corey. This offense is better than last year. It is better than 2017, and the Cubs put emphasis to fix the very issues that gave the Cubs these wins this weekend, and that's why it's so encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to, kind of close the book on that, in the 3 2/3 against Flaherty, he throws 96 pitches. So they work that count up.
I mean, that's it right there. Yeah.
And they also score 2 runs each on Bravia and Gant, two relievers out of the Cardinals bullpen, both who came into this game with sub 2.5 ERAs. Gant, even after giving up 2 runs to the Cubs, was at 1.64 on the season for his ERA.
Yeah.
So these are two guys that have been doing good work out of the bullpen for the Cardinals, and the Cubs were not having it. So I did just want to focus on that game a little bit because I think just for a variety of reasons, that was a really fun Saturday night at the ballpark, a rare Saturday night at Wrigley Field, and another national broadcast for us to suffer through. I'd be curious. It seems that the answer to this is the Sunday night crew, but I would be curious to hear from all of you guys, which broadcast you prefer the least.
Which one is yours, Corey?
It's Sunday. It's honestly, it's not close.
Dude, A-Rod is brutal.
Joe Buck doesn't really bother me as much as he used to. I feel like both broadcasts fall into the same problem, which is when they try to get too much analytical into their little stories and their little anecdotes, it sends things off the rails. And that's to be expected. Like we're obviously just so used to Len and Pat Hughes, who are tuned into the Cubs and, know these guys on such a detailed level, like all of us watching every one of these games, that when you start to hear these national broadcasts going off on these weird stories and tangents that make it very clear they don't pay attention to these teams every day, it's rather annoying. I really don't like John Smoltz, because he's just one of these, like, the game of baseball was better back in my day kind of guys, which you can have that opinion if you want, but it's not particularly productive for the broadcast. Like, we're watching today's game, so cool if, like, they played baseball differently in the 90s. Like, that's not really a useful opinion, but man, like that Sunday broadcast, that ESPN broadcast is just not good, man. If I had to listen to one, I would take Joe Buck and John Smoltz, but I do wonder if people might disagree with me on that. But again, as I've told you guys before, I don't have to listen to either of them for that long. Sometimes, depending on the room I'm in, I do, but otherwise I have 670 queued up on my phone and I mute the TV. Sometimes you got to pause it with the DVR or whatever, but
that's so much effort.
You can figure it's worth it, isn't it?
I get it, but like,
bro, on both of these broadcasts,
no, I mean for Saturday, I just
Cardinals
overlaid it on.
We're
on
playing on Saturday and Sunday night on both of these broadcasts. They spent at least 5 minutes talking about Christian Yelich. How does that even happen, Brendan? Like, he's not playing in this game.
Yeah, you got to advertise future games. I don't know. Look, I hate it.
Anyway.
Like, I listened to Pat and Ron on Saturday night, but like, I was blacked out with my MLB TV account for Sunday night. I don't have like the whole Bluetooth speaker thing. So for me to set it up is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You just got to suffer through it, man.
I suffer through it.
The things we do for love.
Sometimes. I mean, I listened to Game 6 of the World Series on mute. I just could not take Smoltz. I mean, and I swear, I'm not even joking. I swear to God, the first 5 innings, right when that grand slam was hit by Russell, I turned it on because I wanted to hear what they were saying. But I listened to the first 3 innings through mute. No problem whatsoever. I was fine with it.
So I just wanted to talk about that Saturday game. I just thought a really impressive effort all around for a wide variety of reasons. And obviously that's not to say that the Friday and Saturday games didn't have their merit as well. But I think Saturday, a very interesting game to highlight. But I do want to transition to the professor, Kyle Hendricks, because this was a phenomenal effort from Kyle on Sunday night. And a couple things that I want to read for you here. There's a lot of really fun Kyle. If you're a Kyle Hendricks stat person, Sunday was a really cool day because every other tweet I saw from somebody, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. But one that I put out there on the Cubs Insider account at Real Cubs Insider, his 2 starts versus the Cardinals in 2019. I think obviously, for a Chicago Cubs starting pitcher, looking at what they're doing against a top division rival, always of note. He has started against them twice in 2019. He has not walked anybody in either of those outings. Obviously, he has the complete game shutout. 9 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 3 strikeouts, no walks on that first visit to Wrigley Field for the Cardinals this year. And then on Sunday night, 7 innings, 8 hits, 1 earned, 3 Ks, and no walks. So total in the 2 starts against the Cardinals this year, 16 innings pitched, 12 hits, 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts, and 0 walks. That's what we call getting it done, folks.
That's how you do it.
And the Cubs official account tweeted out one of these numbers that in Kyle Hendricks' last 10 attempts against the St. Louis Cardinals, the Cubs have not lost a game.
I believe that's 10-0, Corey. If
10-0
checks out. Yeah,
in his last 10 starts against the St. Louis Cardinals. That is unbelievable.
That's got to date back to what, 2016, right? I mean, maybe like 3 starts a year. That's wild. He has not lost to St. Louis in maybe 3 to 4 years.
The Cubs have not lost. He hasn't, obviously, but I just meant he didn't pick up the W in all those games.
Yeah, he didn't pick up the loss either, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course.
That's crazy, yeah. No, I thought he looked spectacular. I think just every start since the early portion of May, he's looked, I think, his best self, to be quite honest.
Yeah, so I have a number on that from our frequent stat guy. Again, I really can't recommend following Chris Kamka enough. I like to mention that every time just because we use his stats a lot. So I do want to make sure that people are following him and giving him that engagement that we all crave on social media at CKamka, CKAMKA. He's with NBC Sports Chicago, and he tweeted out, I think this probably lines up exactly with what you just said, Brendan. His last 8 starts, 58.2 innings pitched. He has a 1.99 ERA. He's allowed 42 hits in those 58 and 2/3 innings, just 6 walks. 6 walks in his last 8 starts with 50 strikeouts and a 0.818 whip. Guys, Hendricks is on one.
And I think Hendricks is like almost in playoff mode, Corey. And I mean that quite literally too, because we're seeing Hendricks throw upwards to 90 miles per hour. We did not see that from Kyle until like September last year in August of 2017. So it's, I mean, it's feasible to think that, okay, Hendricks is looking like his best self. It's only June 9th. The Cubs rotation is doing all this, and it's hard not to get excited about what could be. And I think for any of the other pitchers on the team, the one guy I'm most comfortable with expecting productivity going forward is Hendricks. It's not a knock on Lester. It's not a knock on Hamels or Quintana or Darvish. It's just that when you look at Hendricks and when he's throwing 90 mile per hour wiffle balls on the outside corner of the plate with consistency now over the past month, you think, okay, that's 2016 Hendricks. That's the same guy that shut down Los Angeles in Game 6 to win the pennant. It's the same guy who started Game 7 of the World Series. That's who Hendricks was, throwing 90 miles per hour at times. And one reason why I think is his extension. So the point at which he lets go of the ball near home plate is similar to what it was in 2016. So you can make the argument, hey, his mechanics are similar to his optimal self, and that has not happened this early in the season since 2016. That has got to get you excited, Corey, because there's been a lot of stretches in the last 2 years when there's been genuine worry about Kyle Hendricks. I don't think that's there right now, and I think for the first time in 3 years, this could be a similar season to what he put up when he was, second in Cy Young voting that 1 year?
Third. I think Lester was ahead of him.
Lester, yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy to think that.
Far be it from me to make that correction, right?
Yeah, of course. But that's why I think I'm so encouraged, Corey, is just because he has the same type of stuff we see early on, this early in the season that he's had in the playoffs recently. You got to be excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, he is absolutely dialed in right now, and we talk about it all the time, but he's just exceptionally fun to watch pitch. I say this all the time, but Jon Lester is my favorite baseball player of all time, but I don't know that I love watching really anything in baseball more than when Kyle Hendricks is on. And they actually have the pitching ninja, who we mention here all the time, on the ESPN broadcast. And that is actually one part of the broadcast that I like, because they show some of those overlays that he does where they overlay 2 pitches at once, and you really just see that illustration of why he is so difficult to hit, the variety of the same pitch that he's able to throw with just little slight differences, little bit different movement, little bit different velocity, and you just start to understand why he's so difficult to hit. And that's actually one part of those broadcasts that I think makes sense for the national audience, where, you have a guy like A-Rod or whatever say, I know some of you at home are looking at this going, this guy's throwing 88, 89, 90, and he's dominating these guys. He's sawing these guys off. He's breaking bats. Like, he's getting all this hard contact, and we can illustrate why that is. And it's just so fun to watch him do his thing. And there is little that gets me as excited as when you see, these guys like Ozuna, Carpenter, Goldschmidt, etc., taking those swings where they are so off balance and just so off on what he is throwing, because they're thinking they're seeing, call it a sinker, and it's a changeup, and they are just not close. It just gives me so much joy to watch Hendricks do his thing. And I'm obviously excited by what you're saying, and you tweeted out that velocity graphic that his velocity is picking up earlier than it has before, because we've just seen him turn in some incredible seasons, and if he is this locked in this early and on a run like he's on, it's going to be a big season for him. But I do think that at the very least, he needs to be an all-star. We can talk about like the Cy Young stuff as we get
How does that work for
further
pitchers,
down
though?
the season. Honestly,
Like,
I don't know. I
you
think
can't
they
vote
changed
him
it.
in, right?
I thought they changed it so that maybe you can. Honestly, I don't know. I think you guys know we're not big all-star game people. But,
No, not a big all-star game right now.
pretty much, this is the type of stuff that we do care about with the all-star game, though. I think we always say this, that like we want the players who really care about this stuff to have those moments, to be able to have those moments, have those.
It's like Wilson Contreras last year.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, he was in tears like behind the scenes when he got that call. So it does mean something for these guys.
That we are into. So I'm all for that. And, like a lot of these guys have been all-stars before. Cargo was making that joke that, he's played with the Cubs before because he was on the 2016 All-Star team, which was predominantly just Cubs.
The entire infield was the Cubs. Yep.
Yes. And that, that does make sense, Brendan, because the 2016 Cubs do go on to win the World Series. So they were the best team in the league.
Yeah.
So it lines up that they would have a lot of all-stars. Yeah. But for someone like Hendricks, he hasn't been there before. So I think that's something that, we'll probably focus on as we go forward here. But obviously, if you have the time, you should be voting for the Cubs. Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, Wilson Contreras, Anthony Rizzo, I think for sure are deserving of those spots. And hey, if you just want to vote all Cubs, I'm not going to complain about that either. But staying with the starting pitching, just because we were talking about guys on good runs, and especially against the Cardinals, I do want to read one note from Tony Andracki about Cole Hamels. And since I was talking about it in that recap, his career line as a Cub in 25 starts after that first game here in this Cardinals series, a 2.81 ERA, a 1.15 whip of course walks and hits per innings pitched, 148 Ks in 154 innings. He also, Tony goes on to say, has a career 0.41 ERA and 0.59 whip in the 3 starts against the St. Louis Cardinals while wearing a Cubs uniform. Guys, this is not to say something, just purposely negative about the guys that the Cubs gave up for Cole Hamels, but they didn't give up top guys. They didn't give
Eddie
up
Butler.
Yeah, they gave up Eddie Butler and a couple low-level guys. I think Rolly Lacy and Alexander Ovalle. And to get the performance that they have gotten out of Cole Hamels, that was an absolute steal for the Chicago Cubs. And I think we talked about it at the time, that it was such a low risk move. You get him out of that ballpark in Texas, which is one of the most hitter friendly ballparks in the league. And, you just try to tap into, I think you in particular, Brendan, were on him from the beginning just because his velo looked good. His changeup had that kind of trademark movement, but, you needed to figure out why was the ERA not working so well in Texas outside of the ballpark, etc. And man, could this trade have worked any better? We look at some of the moves that Theo and his front office have made over the course of these years here, and he's only been here for, not even really a full season yet in terms of just like sheer days, as a Cub. But this has got to be in consideration for a top, sort of ish top tier move that this front office has made, simply because the cost to acquire him was so low, or at least like negligible to the overall status of the organization, obviously in comparison with some of the other moves that the Cubs have made where you're giving up major prospects, right? And his performance is amazing at this point.
That is where that veteran presence, that veteran mindset comes in handy, because unlike the Cardinals, where Flaherty is a young guy, 23, 24, second time facing the same team, he gets shelled. For Lester, for Hamels, they don't have to go through that same type of adjustment phase. They know what they need to do. And for Hamels, he was throwing wicked changeups, throwing 93, 95 mile per hour fastballs. That is the same guy who you expect to see going forward. So this entire series does give you more confidence for future series against this team, or just future big series, because these are big time moments. And sometimes you don't want to extrapolate too much from these early seasons or early series, but at the same time, this is why you feel comfortable with this rotation, because Hamels has that World Series veteran experience. Lester's been there, of course, multiple times. Hendricks, the same thing. And Darvish has pitched in playoff series as well with success. There's a lot to be excited about for the rotation, because they have the experience, the mindset to back up their talent. And you saw where it does come in handy when you face teams as frequently as St. Louis.
Yeah. Absolutely. So again, I think we remain pretty bullish on this rotation, and it's always amazing, even as you were speaking strictly on like deep playoff experience. So I know why you didn't mention him, but it's amazing that you can have that conversation and not even mention Jose Quintana, who's been phenomenal this year. And again, he doesn't have he was with the White Sox for most of his career, so it's no wonder. I love
Q though. I've been giving Q tons of credit every episode.
Right, but I'm just saying that's what's so exciting to me about this rotation is you can zero in and say, let's just talk about how good, in particular, like Hamels and Hendricks were, and you're not even talking about other guys who would be top of the rotation arms for other teams. So that's what's so great about this rotation, is that it is deep, 1 to 5, especially if Darvish can stay on this path of good starts that he's on here. But I want to transition, maybe just a couple quick topics here, and then we'll get ready for this West Coast trip. But I want to read another stat from Tony Andracki of NBC Chicago to circle back to a conversation that we had a little while ago, which was Schwarb's in the leadoff spot, and he has another big game on Sunday night, and Tony goes on to list his stat line in all of these games since he jumped up to the leadoff spot in the Cubs order, a slash line of 258, 349, 562. So that is good for a 911 OPS. He has 16 RBIs, and he scored 20 runs in 23 games. But Brendan, I think we were pro Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot when they first did it in 2017, just on like the overall merit of Kyle's game. And I know in this particular season, when they made this move, you were way bullish on it. Like, I'm always into it, but I don't think many people were as hyped as you were to see Kyle get back up in that leadoff spot. And in 23 games, a 911 OPS, this is like my new thing now, but that'll play, guys. And I think that you're seeing just the feel of the offense when he's up there at the top and able to start things off. You get KB, Rizzo, Javi, like right in there. It's this offense has that kind of relentless feel to them, and we're obviously still playing positional platoon battles with some of these other positions as it relates to other Cubs, but Kyle really is kind of staking his claim at the top of the order here.
Yeah, and that's why I liked it so much too, for that very reason, where you start the game off with Schwarber and you go straight into KB, Rizzo, and Javi, right? So I like the feel of how it looked. And when the season started, I was more so on the, hey, let's go with Zobrist at leadoff, and if Descalso can be any good, flip-flop them back and forth. So it wasn't as if, hey, Schwarber's my number one pick, but when Zobrist went down, that's when it started to click. And with Schwarber in particular taking so many pitches early on, and his improved contact rate, which could be a good or a bad thing depending upon what you look at, I like the feel for it. And in these last 2 weeks, Schwarber was talking about some of the changes he made. He has a lower follow through. He was, I guess, talking to the Sunday Night Crew about. And so that's kind of cool to see. So he's making another adjustment, but overall, the feel for what Schwarber brings right when the game starts. That's what I'm talking about, where you can work deep at bats. This is the second time now, Corey, that Schwarber's gotten yard off of a 10-plus pitch at bat.
Really impressive.
The first one was 16, 17 pitches, whatever it was, 13. And then this one with being 11. That's the type of at bat you get. And I was saying, I'm going to be more patient with Schwarber always, no matter what year it is. We could be talking 2022, and I will be more patient with Schwarber than anyone else because I know he has the trifecta. He has really good bat-to-ball skills, high contact rate, high power potential, and he lays off poor pitches. Those 3 traits, that gets you to be a top 15, 20 hitter in the league. So for those to actually come through and translate to success, that's why you get so excited about it. And I think having that at the leadoff spot, it doesn't scare the pitcher, but having to go through someone like Schwarber to start the game off 5+ pitches right ahead of Chris Bryant, you can't ask for a more formidable top 2. I think realistically, given the Cubs do have Javi and they do have Rizzo right behind those 2 guys, it's difficult for pitchers to adjust to right away. And we're seeing the success of it, at least in the short term here. And going forward, this is what I want. I want Schwarber leading off. I like him playing almost every day. I think it's time. We've come to that point now where we feel comfortable with him hitting lefties too. It's time. We're at the point now where Schwarber is potentially almost an everyday player, and it feels good. And finally, for once, we see Schwarber taking advantage of that opportunity. So it's so fun to watch, and him batting leadoff. It took 2 years for it to work, I think, and maybe it won't work overall, but I think now the signs are looking like Joe Maddon kind of had it right 2 years ago.
Yeah, and just like touching on that, 10-plus pitch at bat, turning it into a home run thing. It was a tweet from Brett at Bleacher Nation that just reminded me when you were talking about this, where he just said that is one of the harshest things you can do to an opposing pitcher. And it speaks to what you're talking about here, Brendan, that having a guy like that, and Schwarber isn't the only person on the team that can do this, but having someone at the top of that order that can battle with a pitcher, like we were saying, in this particular one, in this St. Louis series, he fouls off 6 pitches in the 11 pitch at bat, ultimately to rip a game-tying home run. Like when you have someone at the top of your order that can do that can demoralize an opposing pitcher, make them work, make them try everything in their arsenal and still get over on them, that is a powerful tool. And you can really get into the head of an opposing pitcher when you have someone up there that is able to work at bats like that and obviously slug the way that Kyle can. So it's kind of a unique combination that Kyle possesses. So yeah, that has worked quite well. One quick question I have for you, Brendan, that came to us from a loyal listener, Brent, just related to Schwarber. You talked about how, now he's hitting lefties. He's found himself kind of that everyday playing time at the top of the order, and we're seeing the success of it. When we look at someone like Almora, and I think that we had kind of expected that maybe he would start seeing a schedule similar to that, as his numbers against righties had been better. But then Cargo comes over. He starts to take some of those starts, and we haven't really seen Almora as often as I think maybe some of us would have expected. Certainly, as some of us, a lot of the people in the at Cubs mentions would like to see him, which I think would be every day. Do you, as it relates like Schwarber to Almora, do you think the lack of the everyday playing time is I know Joe spoke that he thinks, that's better for Almora, and being, still careful about those matchups is the way to go. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, but where are you at with someone like Almora in particular as it relates to, now he's really not getting everyday playing time. Do you think that that's the right approach for him going forward? Or do you think that maybe they should have rode him getting a little hot there and see if he could have pushed through to make those adjustments on a more close to everyday basis?
Well, I mean, Joe and the team, they have the right information to make those decisions. We're, fans and outsiders looking in. I can say I wanted to see Al play a little bit more just because he was showing more power. So it makes you believe what he was doing was more real than being a fluke. Where, last year and even in 2017, during his hot stretches, they didn't really coincide with home runs. We saw that this year. So I wanted to see Al play a little bit more. I'm not going to lie. And I think Cargo coming over, it does elongate the lineup in a way that Joe likes just because you have another quality at bat in the middle of the order. So I get what Joe is saying there. I still want to see him more though. It's a delicate situation too, because where Joe is coming from, right? Like you still want to give Al some of these optimal matchups and not expose him too much. But at the same time, as we've talked about, I think some of those difficult matchups are better for Al. They've been better for Javi in the past. They've been better for Schwarber even this year. And I think there is an argument to be made when Al does face those difficult matchups, let's say in the 8th spot or even in the 9th spot, like we saw with Bodie tonight, they do have a potential benefit in the long term. So you have to balance the urgency and you have to balance the long-term potential for some of these young hitters. I don't know if there's a good answer for it. And I think Joe has a better answer than, of course, we do. But all I can say is, yeah, I wanted to see Al play more. I don't know if I was in the same group as the guys last year in 2017 wanting to see Al play more, but because we're seeing that power more so this year, you kind of have to see where that goes, I think. I mean, if this is someone who's going to hit 15 to 20 homers a year with that defense in center field, that's an extremely valuable piece. So I don't know what the answer is. I think Al has looked good even in those few at-bats he has gotten. And even when he's in the game, we saw it on Sunday, right? He makes that one play over his left shoulder, runs down a ball in the gap, deep in the gap at Wrigley. That's still valuable. And I think even as a late inning replacement, a guy who starts against favorable matchups is still good. I still want to see him a little bit more, Corey.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you're right. It is a tough spot, especially when, you do have someone like Schwarber taking the reins a little bit there and making it sort of impossible for Joe to keep him out of the lineup. That reduces the number of positions you're really playing with the handful of guys that already are everyday starters, Chris, Javi, Anthony, and Wilson, though obviously I don't think Albert's going to see any innings at catcher, but you never know. You never know with Joe Madden, guys.
That's true.
But yeah, it's a tough spot, just something to keep an eye on.
I mean, what do you want to see? I know in the past, and you and I have both been guilty of it. We opted for some more power potential in the form of Ian Happ over Almora. We've had the discussion several times. Who would you rather start? And I've said Ian Happ every single time. I think you have as well. And the reason was Happ has 30 plus home run potential. Right. Almora does not. But now that Almora is showing more power potential, it does flip the script a little bit. So, I mean, where are you?
Well, I think that my basic sentiment is, we talked on, I think, the last episode that we were intrigued by someone like Cargo and what he might be able to do, especially as it relates to some of the other bench options that they have or have already tried in the 2019 season. I'm not sure I love how often he's starting, though. I'll say that in earnest. I think you want to see what he has. If you can catch lightning in a bottle there, right? We talked about that. And, everyone's comparing him to Jim Edmonds, like that whole thing. I'm all for it, right? But I do think I would like to see a little bit better of a balance as it relates to Al still getting some of those opportunities against righties. It feels like to start here, they've kind of just been like, Cargo looks pretty good. let's just get him out there. And I don't know. It does feel like it's affecting Almora more than anybody else. Hayward's still been out there primarily, and he's been hitting very well. So I'm not knocking that, but
yeah.
I just think that, at a certain point, like, Cargo might still have some gas left in the tank, and if there is, you do want to figure out if that's the case. But I do think Albert was making strides, and you do worry, are you getting in the way of that or whatever? But like you said, I think that Joe has a really good feel on all of this, and especially the front office. Like, Albert is, I think, that has a special place in the heart of this front office, just given that he was their first, draft pick. So I think that they're not going to do anything that is going to stunt his development. I think whatever they're doing with all of these guys really is ultimately for the best of their ability and of the team. But I think without digging into it too deeply or having that special insight that they do, I would like to see Albert a little more, and not necessarily lose too much time to Cargo.
But okay, so let's preview the series upcoming in Colorado against the Rockies. And by the way, you can get tickets to that series through SeatGeek. With millions of live event tickets and a price match to guarantee, SeatGeek proves there's a better way. In an industry that tends to stagnate, SeatGeek decided to stand out from the crowd. Why is SeatGeek better than the rest? A quick look at the App Store shows over 50,000 5-star reviews. How's that for customer satisfaction? It's just a better process. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web. Then it rates each deal on a scale of 1 to 10. Finally, SeatGeek displays them on an interactive, very easy to use seat map. SeatGeek breaks down the details. For example, green dots on that map mean good deals. Red dots are overpriced deals. I use SeatGeek all the time. I just use SeatGeek to purchase tickets to the upcoming Cup Series in Los Angeles by the end of the week, which we will preview on the next episode. SeatGeek will give you $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use our promo code. Download the SeatGeek app today and use promo code CubsRelated for $10 off your first purchase. That's promo code CubsRelated for $10 off your first purchase. Okay. So on Monday, Yu Darvish will take the mound in the first game of the 3-game set. Darvish is 2-3 with a 4.88 ERA on the year. Jermaine Marquez will face the Cubs once again. He's 6-3 with a 4.07 ERA. That game starts at 7:40 p.m. Central Time, so it's going to be a late one for you guys the entire week for those who are in the Midwest and in the Chicago area. On Tuesday, same start time, 7:40 p.m. Central. Jose Quintana takes the mound, 4-5 with a 3.77 ERA. He'll face Peter Lambert, 1-0 with a 1.29 ERA. The Cubs faced him in his major league debut. Did not bode too well for the Cubs. They tend to do that against guys whom they've never seen. And then on Wednesday, to finish off the 3-game set, Cole Hamels back on the mound for the Cubs, 5-2 with a 3.24 ERA. He'll be facing Antonio Senzatella, who's 5-4 with a 4.95 ERA. That last game of the 3-game set starts at 2:10 p.m. Central Time. And just to give you a full layout of this West Coast trip, then they will go to Los Angeles for a 4-game series, which Corey and I should be at some of those games.
We'll take care of it, guys.
We'll certainly try.
We'll try.
Best. Yeah.
And
that's kind of where we are here. So as it stands, the Cubs are indeed tied for first place with Milwaukee. They're 37-27. Milwaukee's 38-28. The Cardinals now under 500, as you said, Corey, to lead this podcast off. Hate to see it. They're 31-32. They're 5.5 games back. Pittsburgh is 30-34. They are 7 games back of the Cubs and Milwaukee. And then the Reds are 29-35. They are 8 games back of the Cubs and Brewers. And then just to give the complete landscape of the National League, we have Philadelphia, who's 37-28. They are in first place of the NL East, and then the Dodgers, of course, are 45-21. Another hot start for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they are 11 games up in that division. So they're hot. The Cubs will face them at the end of the week. They'll be back on Sunday Night Baseball, another potential playoff preview. This is a very big, important West Coast trip, Corey. So even the Rockies, they're a difficult team. We just saw them. They still have a powerful offense when everyone is clicking. The Rockies are 33-31. And Coors Field plays bizarrely, we saw the Cubs last year. It was the showing of Al Mago when Almora and Baez were batting 1 and 2 last year. They both did extremely well. You might remember Almora making I think 5 diving catches in one game.
It was a lot, yeah.
It was a lot. I mean, Coors Field has huge gaps, so you look for maybe Al to play a little bit more given those gaps. Maybe you see Hayward out in right field in place of Cargo. Maybe you don't even see Schwarber for 1 or 2 games just because the outfield is so big. So all I'm looking for, honestly, Corey, I'm not going to be too greedy. I just want a competitive series where the Cubs don't get, I hate to say it, but they don't get swept. I mean, this is a tough road trip. The shifting time zones. It's always difficult to play in Colorado, then Los Angeles back to back. So you just want them to maintain ground, get back to Wrigley, perform their best and just not get, too far behind. I'm a little, I'm always greedy. You want more series wins, but you gotta be realistic at some point.
Going into a trip like this, especially Colorado's playing well, LA obviously playing really well right now, and again, like you mentioned, like Colorado's a weird ballpark. And that's one, I think we mentioned this when we were talking about, was it Arizona? We're just like, when I go back to like being a kid, I think I don't remember this ever going that well.
Yeah, it's Arizona. And I was there for half those games too. So
yeah. So, and Colorado has that vibe too. There's obviously been some good moments there and some good games over the years, but just feels like one where it's always some weird stuff.
It's those West Coast stadiums. I swear to God, even San Diego has the same feel to it. I just can't take it.
Yeah. So, I think you're right. Like you want to have realistic expectations here. You're going up against 2 good teams. And it's a tough trip, with that time zone change. So I think just, performing well is pretty much how I would, state that. If you can win one of these series, that would be fantastic. If you can if they can put together a winning road trip here, I mean, giddy up. We're going to get back on these podcasts and we're going to go nuts. Yeah, we are going to go absolutely nuts. Because this is tough. And again, you're coming off the heels of a 6-1 homestand where you played really good baseball. Against that same Rockies team. You take care of business against the Cardinals, coming back, getting redemption over them after they swept you. And this is a tough trip. So I think, keeping things in perspective and knowing that they did good work before heading out on this trip is always something to keep in mind. I did think it was funny when in the broadcast on Sunday night, one of the bits that I did hear, the ESPN broadcast, was like, we'll be back next Sunday for what should be another playoff preview with the Cubs and Dodgers. And I'm like, gee, A-Rod, you think? Is it a playoff preview when the 2 best teams in the National League for the last at least 4 years, right? They've met in the NLCS twice. You're thinking that one's a playoff preview? Like, man, no wonder they pay you the big bucks, buddy, because this is some special insight here. Like, come on, man.
So Corey Friedman, not a fan of A-Rod, I think.
No, we've got the Red Sox and Astros next weekend. That might be a playoff matchup. Like, gee, you think? Wow. Anyway.
Yeah,
we're not done with ESPN, so I can't let up on them yet. We can't just pretend they don't exist yet.
I'm going to be at the game on Sunday, so I don't have to deal with that. So it is what it is.
Right. But again, it's a tough trip, and that's not, and I want to be clear, that's not going into it with a defeatist attitude. I'm not expecting them to lose. I'm not expecting it to be a disaster. But it's just to say these are good teams. Colorado is a strange ballpark to play in. And LA is really good. Whether you guys know how sick that makes Brendan and I. But so again, it's not to have a defeatist attitude. I expect this team to perform well and compete in these games and ultimately have a good trip here. But it's just to say this is the one trip where you kind of have to have that, little note in the back of your head.
I think we're scarred too.
You just got to have that little note in the back of your head, this is a tough trip. Yeah. They don't have to fly all the way across the country that often. Let's just get through it, and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming of taking care of business at Wrigley Field, right? Yeah. But as for anything specific in this Colorado series, I think keeping an eye on you is certainly something that we're going to be doing here. He's had a nice run here. Yeah. He's looked really good. His stuff, and this is something, obviously we've been saying for a long time that his stuff is there. And these last few starts, he's really put it together. He's had some really good outings, and you just want him to continue that. And again, obviously Colorado is literally the worst park to, have him try to do that in, because he can pitch well and, still some balls can carry on him and run up that earned run count. But I would say that's really all I'm looking for. And, just with the rate that this team is hitting home runs, I'm hoping that the offense has a dinger party here in Colorado. I think that's their mascot's name, isn't it? Dinger, the dinosaur?
Yeah, I think it is.
Makes, total sense, right?
I like
when everybody thinks of Colorado, they think of, I think it's a triceratops.
It looks like Barney, man. I don't know.
However they came up with that, I don't know. But I do always look forward when we send guys like Javi and Schwarber and Chris Bryant and Rizzo to Colorado.
Schwarber may hit one out of the stadium the way he's been swinging.
Yeah, let's hit some tanks, all right? Like, at the very least, let's hit some tanks. But yeah, I think, we're going to be there for some of these games in LA, and Brendan and I will do our best to TCB there. Yeah, so I think that is all we have for you. An eventful podcast here, Brendan. We've got a sweep of the Cardinals. We're talking fried chicken and cowboy hats. And the professor with just a really wonderful summer lecture series that we are all very lucky to be a part of. And I'm very glad I signed up for that class. I have for the last few years, as we all have. But it's one that I'm very glad I am keeping on the schedule. But college and education related puns aside, we will be back with you to discuss what happened in Colorado, and we will take you through those games and everything that happened in between, keeping an eye as Craig Kimbrell ramps up his schedule here. The Cubs saying that he looked a little ahead of schedule. His stuff looked really good. He was in really good shape. So I think he's going to throw another bullpen in Chicago and then head on out to do some work maybe in Mesa, and then we'll see when he ends up maybe in a minor league stint and ultimately up in that Cubs bullpen. But as always, we thank you guys very much for listening and your participation. Again, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio. I think I said Spotify already, Spreaker, anywhere you listen to your podcast. And if we're not on that particular medium that you prefer, just let us know. I am at CF Cubs Related on Twitter. Brendan is at Cubs Related. Our Instagram is at Cubs_related. I am the one you would be talking to there. So there are many ways to contact us. You can find both of us at CubsInsider.com. Again, we thank you guys for listening, and go Cubs.